Here's everything you missed in WandaVision Episode 5. Alright, let's get one thing perfectly clear. If you haven't seen WandaVision yet, please stop this video, clear out the next 45 minutes of your life, because there is so much that happens in Episode 5 that is truly best experienced unspoiled. Now, Episode 5, titled On a Very Special Episode, is the series' longest to date, and it gives us equal parts reality-altering and reality-check as Wanda's sitcom safe haven and the sword agents waiting outside of Westview increasingly find themselves on a collision course. Now, as always, if you prefer to read all about it, Rosie Knight has you covered over on Nerdist.com, and I will link to that in the description below. We have plenty to discuss with this episode, but as I mentioned, in order to do so, we have to spoil it. So if you haven't seen it yet, go catch up so you can avoid making the same mistake as Jimmy Woo.
What'd I miss?
WandaVision takes us back to the 1980s for a riff on classic sitcoms like Growing Pains, Family Ties, and Full House, which is reflected in both the set design and the opening credits. The Hex Magic Augmented Paintbrush is a reference to Family Ties, as is the entire living room set right down to the couch and the stained glass. The photographs in the intro are straight out of Growing Pains, and that shot of them picnicking towards the end as the camera pans away, that is a direct nod to Full House. Fun side note, director Matt Shakman also starred in a Growing Pains spin-off called Just the 10 of Us. But I think the best part of this intro, it's gotta be Vision's baby pictures, right? I'm not a smart enough person to tell you what those equations are that he's solving, so let's just say it's Mathfisto and leave it at that. Now, speaking of set design, we're gonna get wild right off the bat. You see those curtains behind Wanda in the living room? Well, if you trace over them, what letter do you get? An M for Maximoff. Likewise, the bench beneath has designs that make out both W's and M's, which could stand for Wanda Maximoff. This could quite literally be a House of M, people, but more on that in just a bit. The bigger problem in this episode is that Wanda's made-for-TV paradise is coming apart at the seams as Sword tries to find a way in, the citizens of Westview try to find a way out, and Vision tries to figure out what the hell Wanda is and isn't telling him. So the first moment of extreme unease comes when Vision interrupts a jazzercise-ready and broachless Agnes who's about to calm these screaming babies Billy and Tommy. This throws her for a loop and she breaks character asking Wanda,
"Do you want me to take that again?"
It brings things to a screeching halt as Agnes essentially admits the fact that they are all following Wanda's script in front of the Vision. Now, it's fascinating that Agnes is so lucid during this, because even if she is the witch Agatha Harkness, she's clearly under Wanda's control and terrified of making her angry. After all, we saw what happened to Mr. Hart when he went off script in Episode 1, and that poor sword agent turned beekeeper in Episode 2, and Monica Rambeau, who was literally yeeted through the fourth wall in Episode 3. But as Jimmy and Darcy confirm later in the episode, Wanda decides what makes it onto her show and what doesn't. But to make matters even worse, even more complicated, their twin babies, Billy and Tommy, are growing up at an alarming rate. They start the episode as babies, rapidly grow to 5 years old, and end the episode as 10-year-olds, which, look, I'm not a pediatrician, but that ain't right. So what's happening here? Well, it begins as a physical manifestation of Wanda avoiding emotionally challenging situations, and then it rapidly spirals out of control. When they're crying and then the babies start laughing, Wanda tells them, "I don't think it's very funny, why won't you do what I want?" And before you know it, they're toddlers, which problem solved, right? No, not quite, because as Agnes says, kids can't control them no matter how hard you try, and that's going to be a hard pill for Wanda to swallow. Meanwhile, outside of Westview, Monica confirms that Wanda is projecting her overwhelming grief onto everyone inside of Westview, keeping them trapped in this sort of psychic molasses of sorts. They're in a prison in her mind. Monica's undergoing a series of tests to determine what the hell happened to her inside of Westview, but her scans all come back unreadable, which could be a hint to her spectrum powers from the comics. Now, in the Marvel comics, she's bombarded with extra-dimensional energy, which gives her the power to transform her body into pure energy on the electromagnetic spectrum, hence the name. It's also a great way to explain why her MRI scans look so strange, but the real question is whether Monica had these latent powers, or if the raw reality-altering potential of Wanda's magic fundamentally altered something inside of Monica, kind of like how the Mind Stone was used to alter Wanda. Now, during the Sword briefing, there are a couple items of note. The newspaper, The Daily, which reports on the air raid in Sokovia that killed Wanda's parents, is the same publication we first saw in Lagos, Nigeria in Captain America Civil War. And remember that city because we're going to be coming back to it later in this episode. We also have WHIH, the news network that's the same one from Episode 4 and Iron Man 2. We also see notes about Satellite 348, which could reference Avengers 348, a story about the Vision whose personality has been wiped out, trying to learn to experience human emotions again. We also see A113 listed on Wanda's file, which feels like a reference to Avengers 113, a story called Your Young Men Shall Slay Visions, which features a furious Wanda holding an injured Vision and swearing revenge on the cover. Sound familiar? We also get our best description to date of Wanda's canonical powers. She has neuroelectronic interfacing, telekinesis, and mental manipulation abilities as conferred by the Mind Stone. Much like they teased us with Cap saying Avengers Assemble though, up until Avengers Endgame, Director Hayward and Jimmy beat around the bush and make you think they're gonna say Scarlet Witch, but...
no, sir.
We also see a growing rift within S.W.O.R.D. as Director Hayward views Wanda as this terrorist in need of being put down rather than reasoned with, while Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy, I think, accurately believe that she's deep down a good person in need of help. This is important because it leaves room for the idea that someone else could be pulling Wanda's strings. There's also an interesting dovetailing of dialogue here. Right when Darcy's about to call Hayward a he chimes in with terrorist, which has us once again raising an eyebrow at his true intentions. But then we get the truly shocking revelation that confirms both the deleted Avengers Endgame post-credit scene and the actual timeline of WandaVision, because we learn that 9 days prior, Wanda broke into S.W.O.R.D. headquarters where the Vision's corpse was secretly being stored, maybe so that Hayward can make sentient weapons of his own, and she stole it. And that shot of Vision's body in various parts on the tables in that lab, that is straight out of West Coast Avengers 43 and 44, which coincidentally are issues that give us major clues that not all is right with Billy and Tommy. We learn that by stealing Vision's body and resurrecting him against his will, Wanda also violated the Sokovia Accords, the legal documents designed to regulate the activities of all superpowered people in the MCU, which were signed partly as a result of Wanda's actions during Captain America Civil War. Now, then again, Hayward says that Wanda disregarded Vision's wishes, but he neglects to explain why his engineers were deconstructing a living weapon like the Vision in the first place. Now, once again, Darcy, Jimmy, and Monica are saying exactly what we're all thinking. They ask how Wanda is able to bring Vision back from the dead without the Mind Stone. Now, the most obvious answer is that Vision is only alive so long as he remains within the confines of Westview. Wanda repeatedly tries to warn Vision that they can't leave, they need to stay put. If they leave, bad things will happen.
We could go wherever we want.
No, we can't.
Next, we see a 5-year-old Tommy and Billy wearing outfits that resemble their superheroic Speed and Wiccan costumes from the comics, and in classic sitcom fashion, they're trying to hide a pet from their parents. In this case, it's a dog named Sparky, who's a reference to the adorable robot dog from Tom King and Gabriel Hernandez Walt's fantastic The Vision miniseries. We also learn that the kids can grow older at will. They age from 5 years old to 10 years old in the middle of their kitchen in front of Agnes so they can keep Sparky. Agnes seems completely unfazed, but it does raise questions about whether or not Wanda can actually control these kids at all. But Jimmy also gives us hope of seeing Billy and Tommy as actual young Avengers age when he remarks that Wanda and Vision will be empty nesters by dinner. Monica and Darcy develop a plan to safely re-enter Westview, which is basically tantamount to building a 10,000-pound mobile fallout shelter capable of withstanding all types of radiation and seismic blasts. Monica says she knows an aerospace engineer who would be up for the challenge, and maybe we think this could be a reference to Reed Richards or another member of the Fantastic Four, because as we recently theorized, WandaVision could easily lay the groundwork for the Fantastic Four to join the MCU through S.W.O.R.D's now defunct space program, and maybe this could even be the precursor to the lifeboat that Reed Richards built in Secret Wars in the comics, a craft capable of surviving multiversal incursions, and something that the Russo brothers have said they would want to come back for. Now, speaking of theories, we finally have an answer about all those hexagons. Darcy refers to Westview as the Hex because the Maximoff anomaly, as it's called later on, is shaped like a hexagon. This is, as many of you in the comments have pointed out, a clever reference to Wanda's hex magic, and likely how they'll come to use that term in canon. We also get confirmation that Wanda is wielding immense power to rewrite reality as we know it. Monica says that Wanda's twins are hers and that everything might look fake in the TV, but everything in there is real. Now, as anyone who's read the comics can tell you, that probably isn't the case, but it makes us think once again that Mephisto might be waiting in the wings. So how is Wanda creating something from nothing? Well, to quote Darcy and Jimmy, she's wielding an insane amount of power, far exceeding anything she's displayed in the past. Wanda is rewriting reality itself, both creating things from whole cloth, like Billy and Tommy, and changing existing items like a bulletproof vest into bulletproof bell-bottoms. We also get canonical confirmation of Kevin Feige's assertion that Wanda could have taken out Thanos single-handedly during Endgame if he hadn't initiated a blitz on her. Now there is another Captain Marvel mention, along with the fact that much like Wanda and Pietro, Carol also got her powers from an Infinity Stone, in her case the Tesseract. However, Monica's weird reaction has us wondering what exactly went down between those two to make her respond like this.
We are not talking about her, we are talking about Wanda.
Maybe it's related to her mom getting sick? We'll just have to wait until Captain Marvel 2 to find out for sure. Meanwhile, at Vision's office, things get super creepy super quickly when Norm gets an electronic mail from S.W.O.R.D. that causes everyone to read it in unison like children of the corn. Vision's able to somehow break this illusion, snapping Norm out of Wanda's spell, but when he comes to, he's terrified, disoriented, and desperate to escape, so that's definitely going to come up later on. Vision can break Wanda's spell. Next up, another intruder appears in Wanda's perfect world in the form of a vintage surveillance drone from the 1980s, which is period appropriate. Wanda, though, edits it out of her shot and flares her powers, furious at this invasion of her home by S.W.O.R.D. And things go from bad to worse when Director Hayward commandeers the drone and uses it to launch a missile at Wanda, which goes about as well as you might expect. Now, next thing you know, Wanda emerges from Westview in her old Avengers uniform with her Sokovian accent back and fury flowing through her veins. Considering a Stark Industries missile literally killed Wanda's parents, I don't know, trying to shoot her and her kids with one might be a bad idea, but Wanda is not fazed at all despite a dozen-plus laser sights directly trained on her. Although Monica does try to reason with Wanda, Wanda pointedly tells her and Hayward that she already has everything she wants and no one will ever take it from her again. She then mass mind controls all of these S.W.O.R.D. agents to train their guns on Hayward, while she re-enters Westview, supercharging the barrier with even more Hex energy. Man, sounds like Monica's gonna need a truly fantastic aerospace engineer. I don't know, maybe 4 of them to be precise. I said!
Stop it!
Now, the creepy commercials return with an advertisement for Lagos brand paper towels. Their motto, for when you make a mess, you didn't mean to. The shots of the paper towel desperately trying to clean up a sea of red liquid is a reference to Wanda's trauma from Captain America Civil War, in which she accidentally telekinetically diverts an explosion into a nearby building, killing a group of Wakandan humanitarian aid workers and civilians in the process. It's a horrifying moment that stuck with Wanda for a long time and something that helped to motivate the Sokovia Accords. Once again, these commercials remind Wanda of all the tragedies in her past, the Stark Industries missile that killed her parents, being experimented on by Baron von Strucker, being mind-controlled by Hydra, and her powers harming innocent people in Civil War. And unfortunately, back in Westview, tragedy strikes once again as Wanda and the twins go off searching for Sparky, who's gone missing. They also run into that weird mailman who I have so many questions about, like, who is he? Is he Malefisto? Who knows? But back to that poor pooch at hand. Clearly, this was not part of Wanda's script because Agnes seems petrified that she messed up somehow. Wanda tells her sons not to just age themselves up so they can run away from their grief because it makes them uncomfortable, which, let's be honest, that's pretty rich coming from her. More unsettling, though, is when Tommy tells his mom,
"You can fix anything, Mom. Fix it dead."
Now, even Agnes seems surprised by this, but Wanda denies it. She claims she cannot bring the dead back to life, which has us raising an eyebrow about the Vision, who last episode we learned is still extremely dead.
What is it? What's wrong?
So maybe that rule of hex magic only applies to actual flesh and blood humans rather than synthezoids. It's unclear for the time being, but as I mentioned, my working theory is Vision can only exist within the confines of Westview because that is as far as Wanda's power extends for now. This sad, unsettling moment, though, is short-lived because it immediately escalates into a direct confrontation between Vision and Wanda. Vision calls Wanda out about how she's been manipulating reality, and she replies by trying to roll credits on him ending the episode. And quick note, those are all real people who worked on WandaVision, so great job, team. Keep it up. What follows is one of the single most heartbreaking scenes in the entire series, as a furious Vision rails against Wanda for keeping him prisoner while she claims that she's keeping him and their family safe. There's an uncomfortable amount of gaslighting by Wanda as Vision keeps trying to push back on the rules of Wanda's world, like, why aren't there any other kids in Westview? It's kind of weird, right? But then the doorbell rings, and despite statistics, for once, it isn't Agnes. You know that epic cameo that Elizabeth Olsen was teasing? More like House of, are you kidding me with this?
You didn't see that coming?
No, we certainly did not, even though it has been widely reported and speculated upon, and we did make a video about this very possibility. The appearance of Pietro Maximoff at Wanda's front door had our jaws on the floor. And this isn't the Pietro Wanda remembers as played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's Wanda's long-lost brother, Evan Peters, who played Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men movies, debuting a full year before Marvel's Quicksilver. So how is this possible, you might be wondering? Is this, like Darcy thinks, an elaborate sitcom trope where they recast characters with little to no explanation, like so many war machines, or Hulks, or Red Skulls? Or is this really Pietro Maximoff from another universe?
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
Yes, Peter Parker, we are saying there is a multiverse. Wanda established earlier in the episode she can't raise the dead, at least when it comes to flesh bags like you and me. And remember when Wanda supercharged the barrier to Westview? Now, our theory is that in doing so, she overloaded it with reality warping hex magic and tore a hole in the fabric of the multiverse. She can't resurrect her dead brother here, but she can pull a living version of him in from another reality. Wow. Once Wanda realizes she has the ability to do this, it'll lead to an even bigger overreach in power, turning the multiverse upside down as she bends not just Westview, but all of reality to her whims. Or that rift in the multiverse could lead to something darker, more dangerous trying to get through to our world, drawn to the immense source of power that brought Pietro here in the first place, Wanda. But for the time being, rejoice because Kevin Feige and company did it. We have mutants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everyone who speculated that WandaVision was going to be this reverse House of M, making mutants appear in the MCU, good job. You might be on the right track. Unless, of course, this is also a herring redder than Wanda's magic. Because, folks, as we all know, there still could be another villain out there lurking behind the scenes. While we recently theorized it could be the Elder God Chthon, the latest revelation has us thinking more than ever that if there is another big bad beyond Wanda Maximoff, it's gotta be Mephisto, and Evan Peters is seeming like the likeliest candidate of them all, and if not him, it's gotta be Dottie, or Senor Scratchy, or the Lobster, or could be anyone.
Ralph, my husband, Ralph.
But for now, we have the most unexpected yet expected family reunion of all time, and a whole bunch of questions we hope get answered next week. But there you have it, folks, that's everything we spotted in WandaVision Episode 5. We'll keep you up to date on all things WandaVision over on Nerdist.com, but in the meantime, tell us, what did you think of this episode? Did you spot anything we missed? Let's discuss in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.